Sin, a first-person shooter set in a dystopian, action-packed future. It's a game that tries to answer the question, is a buxom antagonist enough to bring light to a game being eclipsed by a legendary shadow? Hello there, my name is Red, and today I'm going to try to answer a simple question. Should you play it? Let's find out right now. Don't forget to like and subscribe to let me know that you want more of this content in the future. I will be covering all 3 releases of Sin, which includes Sin, the expansion Wages of Sin, and the failed launch of its episodic adventure, Episodes Emergence. As always, I will attempt to keep the story as spoiler-free as possible, but since I'm talking about all 3 releases, this makes spoiler-free difficult. So be warned, spoilers are ahead. Sin's first release was in 1998 by developer Ritual Entertainment and published by Activision. Created in a modified version of the Quake 2 engine with an initial start in the first Quake engine. Sin is a game that perhaps you've seen on a list of cult classics. Maybe you are of a certain vintage and remember playing it, like me. Perchance you've seen its gold edition available in digital stores, or you have spied the, at the time of this recording, as yet unreleased remaster. Maybe you are completely unfamiliar with it. So let's begin, shall we? You play as Colonel John R. Blade, a rough-and-tumble character from the city of Freeport. Owner of the privatized security force team with a name that screams, I came up with this when I was 12, hardcore. Oh yeah, you heard me. In the year 2027, to combat uncontrollable crime, the government, in its infinite wisdom, authorizes the creation of privatized security force teams, called Sec Forces. Shockingly, this actually worked, somehow, and the city of Freeport was pulled from the brink of collapse, Blade's hardcore Sec Force, say that 3 times fast, being amongst the most respected. Now, 10 years on, the game begins, and we are given our very first cutscene in Sin, in all its blocky glory, as Blade is called to a bank heist currently in progress.
Sec Forces Emergency, Code Delta 9. Freeport City Bank was just taken over. Robbery in progress.
Damn. Any word on how many there are?
There's an undisclosed number of assailants with hostages still inside. They're heavily fortified and deeply entrenched already.
Get the assault chopper ready.
Already done that, boss.
Good work. What's the word from our team in that sector?
It's not good, boss. We've lost contact and suspect that they've been cut off, or worse.
All available HC units. Hostiles are armed and extremely dangerous. Approach with deadly force.
Hey, Chief. Are we locked and loaded yet?
Yes, sir. Ready to roll.
Roger that. Hey, Blade, give him hell.
You got it. Okay, Chief. Let's punch it.
Arriving in an extra special fashion via a personal helicopter, you wield what I can only describe as a f***ing massively overcompensating mounted gun that is also blisteringly loud.
Not so fast, chump.
This is a common practice, throwing a player into a world with an overpowered weapon, hooking in players, getting them ready for more. This small first mission also highlights something Sin puts in throughout its levels: optional or secondary objectives. Players can check their objectives at any time and will sometimes find optional objectives listed. These can be such things as finding an alternate route, minimizing civilian casualties, finding all of the stolen loot, and more. They aren't necessary for completion, but smartly encourage exploration and replayability. Now, for the purposes of this video, I played the gold edition of Sin from GOG.com. The game has been updated to run on modern systems including widescreen support, which does neatly bring us to my first issue. The HUD is tiny. I am playing on a 2K monitor, which might have something to do with it, and yes, my eyes might not be the greatest anymore, but I found myself inelegantly leaning in on multiple occasions like an old man, trying to search his inventory for those newfangled glow sticks that kids keep talking about. You do in fact get glow sticks, which dynamically light up areas. Sadly, they are a little more, look how cool this tech is, and not so much a, this is in any way necessary for progression or useful in gameplay terms. They are sort of just there. In Sin's expansion, Wages of Sin, the player quickly collects a torch, flashlight for some of you, which is occasionally necessary to see where you're going. Though why Blade has to scavenge this affordable item and doesn't have it as standard issue, in what I'd like to remind you is his own damned company, is beyond me. But inarguably the most important part of any first-person shooter is, of course, the shooting part. So how does the original Sin hold up? Not horrible, but not great, to be honest, which is, yes, sort of the point of this video. The aiming is a bit sluggish, a bit unresponsive, and generally feels off. I found myself aiding my aim with strafing left and right rather than using my mouse because often it was just easier. I tried my best for my playthrough to find fixes online, but while they did help a little bit, it wasn't completely fixed. Supposedly, Sin calls upon Windows functions such as mouse acceleration by default, regardless of whether you actually have it on or not. Sin's options menu does include a mouse input setting, but results seem to vary from PC to PC, so your experience may be different from mine. But you may be thinking, is this just a modern eye on an old game? Well, let's dive back to 1998 for a second, shall we? By its release in early November, Sin had already made the news for all the wrong reasons. Reportedly, as many as 3 different European magazines shipped with demo discs containing both woohoo, the Sin demo, but not so woohoo, a computer virus called the CIH virus, which, when activated, deleted your entire computer's files. Activision, of course, claimed no knowledge of this virus and refuted that it was Sin specifically that was packed with the virus. When customers finally got their hands on the full release, complaints of bugs, glitches, and long loading times were plentiful. Its initial patch to address these issues had its own problem. Its size was reportedly anywhere between 18 to 30 megabytes. Crazy, I know. Today's internet would download this in mere seconds or minutes, but in 1998, due to the constraints of dial-up internet, this was actually pretty big. It was considered so massive, Activision even offered to mail out CDs with the patch on it to those that purchased the game at no additional cost to the customer. By now, of course, Sin has been patched. I only had one crash to desktop during the 1998 game and the expansion. I only ever found one missing wall texture, and rather unfortunately, the music for the anticlimactic boss battle in Wages of Sin just didn't play. Sin was undoubtedly rushed out, reportedly to meet the Christmas market, though others state it was an attempt to beat out its main rival to market. So, let's address the crowbar-wielding elephant in the room. Upon release on the 4th of November, Sin was set to compete with something huge, Half-Life. Released just 15 days later on the 19th of November in 1998. Both games are action-packed, first-person shooters delving into the horrific world of science fiction horror. Both experienced good holiday sales, favourable reviews, and sequels, but it seems Sin fell to the wayside in the minds of gamers. Unlike Half-Life, which deals with science experiments gone wrong and alien invasions, Sin deals with the much more depressingly realistic themes of greed, corruption, evil corporations, and their lack of governmental oversight. As you play through Sin, you quickly discover the evil machinations of the beautifully brilliant S&M clothing enthusiast, Elexis Sinclaire. Video game marketing at its most 90s ever.
From the day I spliced my first gene, I saw the power contained within our very own genetic chains. There are colleagues of mine that call me insane. They say my experiments on humans have broken their laws of science, and they would be correct. I have broken their antiquated laws, which have...
As you can hear, she is a perfectly normal and stable-sounding human being. Elexis Sinclaire and her very innocent-sounding company, SynTech, are behind the highly addictive drug filling the streets, simply called U4. But now, its users have recently begun to experience strange side effects. Elexis Sinclaire is the antithesis of subtlety, both in-game, with her logos and goons blasting their way in and out of every situation, and as a marketing ploy. Side note, let me know in the comments if you think this is exactly the logo Shrek would have if he also turned to the life of running an evil organization. Elexis is very busty, with a ludicrous waist that puts corset connoisseurs to shame. She was a very transparent marketing tactic. She featured heavily in her pre-rendered CGI version, wearing red leather with ample cleavage. Throughout the game you'll also find calendars, and of course, they've got bikini-clad ladies on them. I think. It's sometimes hard to tell. This is, however, something you definitely see quite a lot in other games too. For For the Steam version, several textures were replaced to remove nudity, references to drugs, and copyright issues, but it also seems that more recently, these have been predominantly restored. It's rather hard to find a list of what was taken out, what has been replaced, and what is now restored again, so I think we'll just leave it at that. And again, yes, of course, because this game is made by horny motherfuckers, the female NPCs you run into are also ludicrous, especially in Wages of Sin when you rudely burst in on this lady in the shower, her bits and bobs only being covered up by foam. It does make me wonder if the over-sexualization of women in this game are a result of the general lewdness of the time, or it's being pushed or forced upon the developers by certain higher-ups. And for some reason, they also decided that civilian male NPCs should have the campiest run possible, and also possess the power of invisibility. At the time, Elexis was praised for her attractiveness, and was often compared to the blocky and also busty Lara Croft for their sex appeal. Looking at her, it is a very obvious relic of old marketing and the admittedly quite correct idea that sex sells. Let's be real, there is a reason that the lusty shenanigans of the romance book genre outsells any other genre year after year. I will, however, happily give credit to Alexis's voice actor, Hannah Logan. She provided her voice for Elexis in every game.
Hello, Blade. Welcome to my little kitchen of horrors. I've cooked up something very special, just for you. Finally, I have my little secret admirer in hand. Such a sweet little creature. My imagination is just running wild with all the things I can do with a specimen like this. Bon appetit, Blade.
She brings a fantastic, deep, purring sinisterness to Elexis Sinclaire. It fits well and makes you want to push on as Blade and stop her evil plans. Blade himself is voiced brilliantly by Eric Mills.
Roger that, JC. I'm going in.
Blade, wait for some backup.
No time to wait. I'm going in. You don't look like much of a cook. You'll have lots of time to learn, though, in prison. The tunnel to the waterworks is caved in. No time to wait, JC. We've got to find another way past this tunnel.
He does a great job as the brash, hard-hitting colonel that gets the job done and doesn't have time for backup. And also, friendly AI is hard to program, which I think is why you only receive backup a couple of times throughout the games. And the backup either dies quickly or disappears rapidly behind barriers Blade finds it impossible to cross himself. The enemies themselves, for the time, were robust and praised. They will hide, seek cover, call for reinforcements, and respond to situations, although sometimes they do take the I can't see you, you can't see me approach. At least they can take bullets like champs. Ritual Entertainment also included a area hit detection system, which can be visibly seen by ripped clothing and bloodied areas, depending on where they're shot, and this system also takes into account damage, i.e., headshots hurt the most. Pretty standard stuff now, but for the time it was pretty new. Now, pushing through the story, Blade discovers the popular drug U4 has become much more dangerous, and soon you will find yourself facing mutants.
The pain. Oh my God.
That's right, drugs are bad. Fighting through waves of what has to be the worst drug hangover in the world, Blade will find himself struggling against waves of bad guys and monsters. They really went out of their way to ensure Blade also found himself in varying environments. These include, but are not limited to, an oil rig, construction yards, a subway that looks in fine shape, thank you very much, a water treatment facility, and a nightmarish jungle filled with lava for some reason. The expansion adds in more locations for its own stories, such as a casino and a big shipping yard. As is tradition, you acquire weapons as you go. Sin and Wages of Sin provides you with quite the arsenal of weapons. My favourite and the first weapon you start with is the Magnum. A beefy square pistol that thumps its way through enemies, and in my eye, an iconic weapon. You quickly acquire a serviceable shotgun and a submachine gun in the initial bank heist. Some weapons do have a secondary fire, but I'll leave those for you to discover for yourself. More weapons become available as you go. They include a chain gun, a rocket launcher, nice and standard, a sniper rifle fitted with an unnecessarily complicated folding sight because why not, a stinger pack, which is a backpack that fires a swarm of aimed rockets. Somehow, a concussion gun for sci-fi blue energy fun, spider mines, good little boys that are kin to the old C4 throw and detonate, a quantum destabilizer, a sci-fi energy weapon, plasma cannon, another sci-fi energy weapon, and also a weapon that you must find the parts for as you go before being able to use it. Quite cool. A plasma bow for if you only want to be lightly sued by Disney, the IP-36, a nuclear weapon of devastation and tenuous legality, a flamethrower, war crime incarnate, and a spear gun for the oh-so-fun underwater level. Because, oh yes, of course there is an underwater level, and no, dear viewer, it is not fun. It is not fun at all. In what I would charitably call a f***ing nightmare is the obligatory underwater level, a staple of video games about as welcome as a mysterious rash, a blue-tinted hellscape of pain and misery. It's a confusing labyrinthian maze with similar-looking water corridors that lead to wrong ends and looping back on themselves. I imagine they're meant to provide alternate routes, but you find yourself often going backwards when you should be going forwards. And I feel like I brute-forced my way through this tunnel which pushes you back rather than finding the correct way through. It felt wrong to go the way I did. The swimming mechanic itself isn't inherently bad, it's just genuinely not a fun level. A fun mechanic Sin did bring to the table was the ability to access DOS-like computer terminals. From here, the player can turn off security systems, find passcodes, look through security cameras, and unlock things. Sin also incorporated a fun armor system. You can find armor throughout the world. You can also loot the bodies of those that you have crushed for parts as well. Your body has several slots that are filled with armor, and protects you while it is there. There are several puzzles to solve to progress as well. Nothing amazingly complex, but a good break between battles and a chance for exploration. You even find yourself in the guise of an employee for part of a mission, trying to sneak your way through to your objective without raising suspicion. As mentioned, stealth is occasionally an option too. Crouch walking around like a little gremlin, but it's never required for a main objective. Only secondary objectives are affected. It's a serviceable mechanic. However, be warned, some areas can be difficult without at least attempting to sneak for a while. You can sneak around and surprise enemies, but in the end, it's never quite as fun as just blasting your way through. For story reasons that I don't think I need to get into, so stop asking, Blade finds himself temporarily transformed into a mutant. This brings in new melee attacks and another chilling glimpse into the cruel experiments of Elexis Sinclaire.
Something's wrong. I feel different. My God, what has she done to me?
Sin contains themes of body horror. Whilst on the heels of Elexis Sinclaire, you discover her terrifying laboratory, a place where humans are cut apart, experimented on, and transformed into mindless drones to fight her wars. It is genuinely quite horrific at times. During your travels, you may find hidden secrets. These often contain loot and/or Easter eggs. An example, behind this destructible wall, you will find a gigantic rat next to a pool of glowing liquid, which is perfectly fine and normal. Your ever-present radio handler, JC, will often banter with Blade about these hidden areas on top of their usual chatter throughout the game. A nice extra touch, and again, another reason to encourage exploration. So check out those nooks and crannies and look for suspiciously cracked walls, I suppose. Because the developers couldn't leave well enough alone, there is a certain secret, something I remember stumbling upon as a young lad. You find a janitor's closet. A hidden key elsewhere in the level unlocks it. You come to find hidden security cameras, creepily spying upon Elexis Sinclaire in the bath. It is a little less on the saucy side than it is on the disturbing side.
Rub-a-dub-dub.
There was also apparently a unused nude texture for Elexis in this scene, which has understandably been removed. To cap off talking about the first Sin game, I must also mention the worst controlling vehicles ever rendered in 3D. Yes, there are vehicles in Sin. Not too many, but considering how badly they control, one is still too many. If you were to observe someone playing Sin and saw them driving, for instance, this quad bike, you would genuinely believe they must be taking the piss. It could not possibly be that bad. But oh yes, dear viewer, it is that bad. I'm assuming, due to programming restraints, vehicles in Sin only seem to recognise 45-degree snap turns, and basically handle like you're riding an unwilling and ill-tempered cat. It wouldn't be so bad if driving at one point wasn't basically required. Blade will find himself fleeing a rising sea of lava in the aforementioned nightmare jungle for reasons. It is a tricky bit of driving considering the controls, and the rising lava can eventually catch up to you. It is one of the more frustrating sections, not due to lack of skill or patience, but merely rubbish controls. In the end though, Sin is an action-packed romp with a Bond-esque villain crossed with creepy undertones, but also way too horny. Unfortunately, older and unrefined controls tie its hands behind its back from being a great classic. Nostalgia definitely does some heavy lifting for me in the end. There is actually another vehicle I have vague memories of, and that's where Sin's expansion, Wages of Sin, comes in. Released on the 25th of February 1999, again published by Activision but this time developed instead by 2015 Inc., who most notably developed Medal of Honor, Allied Assault. Reportedly, they sent in a mod made in the Quake engine to Activision to show off their skills. Activision were impressed and awarded them the contract to develop Sin's expansion, Wages of Sin. Work began on Wages of Sin before Sin was released, and customers got their hands on the expansion only 4 months after Sin's release, which any way you put it, feels once again rushed. Wages of Sin brought to the table a new single-player story, a couple of the aforementioned weapons and torch, the ability to dual-wield the Magnum pistols, and attach silencers to both the pistols and the SMG. Fun but sort of janky rope-swinging physics, and new multiplayer maps and modes, with the final addition being thermal goggles. These help you see bad guys in the dark without using the torch. I have memories of zipping around on the red hoverbike, blasting away foes and generally having fun. When replaying the Sin series for my Let's Play series, hint hint, subtle plug, check the description, I found myself wondering, where's that cool hoverbike? It is in multiplayer, but it's not actually in the single-player game. Well, it is technically there, but it only exists in a cutscene. Sadly, it feels like the ending of Wages of Sin's story was rushed. You excitingly escape an exploding building on a hoverbike, but only in a cutscene. In my mind's eye, I can see the tight tunnels, the explosions nipping at your heels as you rush through ever-increasingly outlandish and preposterous tunnels, before finally bursting out with a singed backside and a juicy quip. I can only imagine a couple of reasons why this didn't happen. One, they didn't think about it, which I highly doubt considering the bike is there and working and in multiplayer. 2, a tale old as time, being pushed by the publisher. Sin's holiday season sales were reportedly rather good. Getting the expansion pushed out while Sin was still fresh in people's minds would have been a priority for them. Or 3, they couldn't quite get the hoverbike to fit the level properly. The hoverbike operates differently than other vehicles as you use the mouse to control the direction rather than WASD, which is only used for acceleration and braking. The hoverbike is still quite a fun little thing to bounce around in multiplayer. Unfortunately, the multiplayer levels are quite empty nowadays. In the end, it never happened. I feel there is an obvious gap where that should have been, but it is not. So alas, you get a quick cutscene and are thrust into an underwhelming fight in an unexciting arena for the final boss battle. Again, I can only imagine the small and lackluster arena a result of time constraints. I won't talk more about Wages of Sin's story because that's for you to experience. In the end, you got a slightly shorter story with a boss fight that left much to be desired, and players would have to wait 7 more years before getting their next installment of Sin, which would sadly also be its last. So finally, let's talk about Sin Episodes Emergence. Released on the 10th of May in 2006, developed and published by Ritual Entertainment. Once again, Sin finds itself intertwined with Half-Life, as both franchises find themselves trying out episodic content. We return and nestle into the brain of John Blade, back in the city of Freeport. Now in the same engine as Half-Life 2, the Source engine. We once again find ourselves confronted with Elexis Sinclair's cleavage, this time almost immediately.
Tell me, how do you expect this to end?
He fell right into my hands.
Don't be naive, Roddick. I know this man. Trust me. He knew exactly what he was doing. Is he ready for the procedure?
The tech says he's ready to go. Are you sure this is what you want, Elexis? We should just put a bullet in his head. Hell, I'd be happy to do it for free. Your pal and I have some unfinished business.
Your lack of vision is your greatest weakness, Roddick. You should know better than anyone that I get exactly what I want. Besides, my dear Roddick, I don't want Blade dead. I have much bigger plans for him. Take care of him. I'll be back when it's taken effect.
Emergence follows Half-Life's suit, with the removing most cutscenes and having the player follow along, excluding the initial boobage wake-up and a later car ride. The story is much shorter for Emergence, around 3 to 4 hours to Sin's 7 to 12 hours, relying upon the idea of pumping out content quicker in episodic format, as Half-Life 2 was doing as well. Of course, Elexis Sinclaire makes her return, slightly less ridiculous, but still very much a chest-heavy marketing ploy. Elexis and Blade continue their love-hate battle. She continues to toy with Blade like a Bond villain, letting him unwisely escape and allowing him to continue his path of destruction. Our affable radio friend JC also makes his return and continues to be your guide throughout the game, albeit a little less as his duties are often shared with a newcomer, Jessica Cannon. Jessica is basically Alex from Half-Life 2, cut from the same programming and animation cloth, but in a somewhat more unwise battle attire complete with mid-2000s whale tail. She occasionally joins Blade in battle, but much like Alex, she often finds story reasons to leave.
I'm gonna head back to the car and see if I can establish an uplink with JC directly. He'll get us out of here. I'll meet back up with you as soon as I can. Keep yourself alive, Blade.
In combat, she's unsurprisingly as good as Alex is. She can take a hit and will help out, taking down the occasional bad guy for you even. Sadly, Blade himself has been sequestered to a predominantly silent protagonist. Gone are his conversations with JC on the radio and his quippy but insensitive one-liners. He does occasionally say a line or two, but not nearly as much. His lines are mostly hidden away now to optional radio conversations you can have, in which you need to press a button when a prompt appears.
JC?
That's a primary power relay, Blade.
Jessica.
Guess you found the processing room.
It's a fun idea, but if you don't notice them, you just miss them once you leave the area. It must have also been quite disappointing for Blade's returning voice actor. Instead of getting pages of fun lines to read, he probably got maybe a page. It was apparently a limitation of the Source engine. Gordon Freeman was always a silent protagonist, so there was no need to implement this system. This was one of the things Ritual Entertainment wanted to fix for the next episode. Being the first chapter of what was meant to be many, Emergence brings only 3 weapons to the table. The Magnum pistol makes its glorious return along with a shotgun and an assault rifle. Now I personally think, although limited, the weapons in Emergence are great. They are genuinely really fun, and in my less than humble opinion, they beat their counterparts in Half-Life 2 as well. The Magnum pistol is precise, allowing for a single shot headshot takedown on a basic enemy, which feels great, and its fantastic and unique beefy audio punch makes its return. The shotgun is a typical video game shotgun with an exaggerated blast radius and effective range of about as far as you can throw the damn thing. This works well though, to fill in the high damage output needed for tougher enemies or groups. The assault weapon is a solid and fun weapon too, with a tight spread pattern and has the ability to drop basic goons quickly like the Magnum. I found myself bouncing between the Magnum and the rifle mostly. Each gun has a secondary fire, such as the Magnum's penetrating power shot, which can penetrate through materials as well as multiple enemies. Blade can also throw grenades, and unlike Half-Life 2, it has a dedicated button rather than Half-Life's more archaic weapon wheel select type. An aim-down sight mechanic is also at your disposal, but except for a few long-range shots with a rifle using its scope, it's pretty unnecessary as it offers no increase in accuracy and feels like it hinders rather than helps your line of sight. These weapons allow Blade to swoop around firing bullets and throwing grenades quite effectively. It is a genuine pleasure to drop basic goons with quick shots from your pistol. We get more environmental puzzles as we make our way on the heels of Viktor Radek, Elexis Sinclair's stereotypical Russian accented henchman.
Blade, I wish I could say I was surprised to see you. She said you'd come. I didn't want to believe it. I figured you'd be smarter than that. You really have no idea, do you? No concept of the scope of this operation. This isn't about you. It's not about me. It's about power. It always has been.
An example of a puzzle is this superheated room. You must turn off the heat, rush, crouch, jump, and make your escape before the temperature gets too much. Again, these puzzles serve as a break between combat areas. Hidden secrets make their return, but they are lackluster. Some hidden items and a message is your reward. No quirky hidden Easter eggs anymore. No bestial transformation is found here either. Something may have been planned in that aspect as you start the game captured and being experimented on, but nothing comes of it here. The same sex sells angle is tried again in Emergence. Not long after escaping Alexis's ample cleavage being shoved in your face, you promptly pass out after being rescued, only to dream of a bikini-clad Elexis Sinclaire. At least they tried to differentiate themselves from Half-Life. A shame they did it with the proverbial eye candy rather than, plot and gameplay. Emergence at least offered a new system implemented by Ritual Entertainment, a dynamic difficulty system that customized itself to the player's performance. Ritual Entertainment stated that a seasoned FPS player and a newbie could both start and end at relatively the same time, due to the game adapting itself to the player's skill level. This engine was called the Personal Challenge System. As is tradition for Ritual Entertainment apparently, at launch this system was bugged and never actually eased up on the player, making the game, quote, unforgiving. To Ritual Entertainment's credit, they proved themselves time and time again at being skilled at pushing the boundaries of engines and implementing systems that for the time were exciting and new. They even implemented a multi-material system to the Source engine, which did not originally support this. For instance, a vehicle would be all metal, even its glass, but with this new system, the glass would behave as glass and the metal would behave as metal. Simple. To balance the positive with a negative again, because that's good storytelling, in 4 short hours, Emergence did crash on me twice, once loading a new level, the second happening randomly during a gunfight. In the end, Emergence sadly suffers from its episodic nature. Along with its limited weapons, there aren't a huge variety of enemies. The levels are a bit more generic and samey, and the color palette isn't very exciting. But what is hindered most is the story. Emergence is the first chapter, the introduction, just dipping your toe into the pool of Freeport City. You spend most of the time chasing Victor Radek, not Alexis herself. You get hints of an exciting new story. Once again joining Blade at his chance to finally take down Alexis Sinclaire and her horrific machinations. It's the setup to a potentially thrilling punchline that never gets told. The episode ends and teases more story to come. Alexis Sinclaire's mutants running amok. But that's it, a cliffhanger. The book's story ends here. No new chapters and no answers. On the 24th of January 2007, less than a year after Emergence's release, Ritual Entertainment was acquired by Mumbo Jumbo. Their focus was pushed into casual games and many of the team left for other studios, killing any chance of another episode. 9 in total were planned. We only got 1. So in the end, should you play it? Sin and Wages of Sin are very much of their time. A janky but fun romp in the blocky nostalgia of the late 90s, selling themselves with the enticement of action-packed horror and boobage. And I also want to give the makers of Sin credit for making the protagonist a man of colour, and voiced by a man of colour, both a rarity for the time. Emergence sold itself on the excitement of a fancy new engine, new systems with tighter combat, and more episodes to come. And boobage. That's all for now. So let me know. Will you play it? Let me know in the comments. And thank you for watching. I have been Red. Goodbye for now.